Welcome to the Zvedá podcast. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Lorena.
We're a community for women by women. We're here to help each other rise to impact generations. Hi, ladies. Welcome to the Zvedá She Rises podcast. I am so excited for our episode 23 today. We have a guest, and I'm about to let her introduce herself to you. But as you know, we have been talking all about routine and the model to reach any goal and achieve any dream. That's what this whole season has been about. And so we really wanted to bring that full circle and bring in an expert. And this is Barbara Salisbury, and she is with BeFocusDriven.com. What a perfect name to go with this season of our podcast. So Barbara, why don't you tell the ladies just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So Be Focus Driven is, I always put the emphasis on the middle part because it takes focus. If we want to be driven, ladies, if we want to accomplish big things, what I've learned throughout my career and working with many, many, many leaders is it's the focus part. And that's where talking about routine is really going to be emphasized in there. So I am a leadership coach, which means I work with people who have big goals and lofty dreams. And often they are extremely passionate about those because they are dreams and goals that matter to them. They're really important things. And so that's where having these routines, and I'm excited about talking about this today because I've seen routines be applied to those lofty goals and actually seen them come to pass after trying many other things.
Yeah.
And so that's often when my clients come to me as they're stuck. And so they're entrepreneurs, they are C-suite leaders, they just carry a lot of responsibility and they have a lot of passion.
Yes, awesome. And Lorena and I met Barbara, we're introduced to Barbara, and she has helped us do that. And so I know, ladies, we often talk about our own experiences, and that is how we met Barbara, and she has been helping us to be focus driven as well. So we're just really excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So let's get started. We wanted to talk a little bit about what your top thoughts are on the importance of a routine to actually be able to either step into a goal or achieve a goal. So what are your thoughts on that?
Routine just plays such a huge part with accomplishing goals. Like I was just saying, having a goal that matters. And once you get a vision or you get a goal, especially when we believe that it's from God and it matters a lot, we can sometimes lose our minds and get so excited and get so overwhelmed that we will just jump. We'll just jump and try to make things happen. And, you know, that without a routine and a process for managing getting that goal accomplished, we can end up in some really bad thinking, like we're failing, or maybe this wasn't mine after all. Maybe I didn't hear God. I mean, I've come across people that actually God has given them direct things to go do, and they get so excited, but the brevity of it, like the weight of it rather, can be so overwhelming that if we don't come in and apply structure to how we're going to go do that, so we may know what we want to go do and why we want to go do it. But if we don't figure out how we're going to go do it, we just end up back at start.
That's so true.
Yeah, it's very debilitating.
Definitely something you've helped us to work on, you know, is be able to, you know, because we have so many thoughts, and every session that we were having was turning into a strategy session. And you're like,
yes.
No, what did you actually say? Can't be all about strategy.
Yeah, strategy has its place, but shouldn't be every conversation. So at some point, we got to dig down and do the thing.
Yes. So that was really great. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you've modeled this in your own life, maybe in your own career journey, or if you have an example from maybe one of the individuals that you coach?
Sure. I could use the example of my own career as a really good example. I was an accomplished, in all rights and means, project manager and making great money. I love the people I worked with. And I started sensing some not complete fulfillment. No matter what I was doing, I was performing great. Everybody was happy with me. I was getting promotions. But in my own self, the goal had met its place, I think, in my life. And about that same time, I took an amazing class at my church on spiritual gifts. And I was like, well, duh. Like, this is why I'm not fulfilled, because the role that I was in actually wasn't giving me enough being in my true gifts and talents. So I was getting burnt out is what was happening. And I didn't really recognize that until I started applying, get wisdom, get godly wisdom, get some knowledge going on here with my situation. And so I got super excited. I'm like, oh, I get to leave. I get to go do something different. But it was actually applying the structure of getting the training, doing these, putting the money aside to get the training. And so I had to set these smaller goals in order to accomplish the bigger goal. And for each one of those smaller goals, I needed some grounding in routines and how I was going to go about doing that if I really believed this is where I was going to go. And so it took me several years. I want to go do it right away. I'm driven. I see something and I want to jump and I want to go and do it. I get excited and I have the passion. But it took me committing to the structure, the routines, the smaller goals to actually achieve it, where I am full out doing that and have been for over 10 years now.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And what, as you're speaking, you're talking about taking the little steps. Mm-hmm. How did that play out, or how did that feel to be able to take the smaller steps? It maybe took longer than you would have wanted or expected, but you were seeing progress. How did that play out, or how did that feel as you were building that?
Well, originally it felt awful. It felt awful. And often that's what it feels like when you're excited about something. Your original thoughts of buckling down and getting your hands to work doesn't sound like fun at all. I wanted to go do what I saw. I'm like, well, it's of God. Certainly he's going to make this happen. Let's go.
Right.
But, so originally it felt binding. It felt uncomfortable. I often see that in my clients when they come, because they're in that place where they're wanting something new. They're ready to jump off the cliff. And so originally it doesn't feel good to work on time management or the smaller things that are actually needed to see it come to fruition. But once you do, if you can build your habits and routines in and start seeing the results and the fruit and the incremental growth, it's like starting a workout routine. It's often like so hard to get started, but once you do and you start seeing the results, you want more.
Yeah.
You want more routine. You want more smaller goals. And so you actually fall in love with the routine, and you're keeping your eye on the prize. God tells us to do that. Keep your eye on the eternal things, the things that matter. But he also says, I'm a lamp unto your feet, which is only next steps. And so you marry those together, and I've seen people accomplish amazing things with both of those together. Keep your eye on the prize. Look down at your feet, do those next steps, stay in the grind of it. It's not always comfortable, but it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I think, the next thing that often happens or can happen is life, right? Life happens.
Yes, it
does. Seasons change and we get busy, or we have a pandemic, something out of our control alters our progress. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about your perspective on the stall. Like what happens, whether it's within our control, like we're discouraged, we're not seeing results fast enough, or it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, or something outside of our control comes into the picture and we just stall out.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that, and how to jump off the starting line again?
Yeah, get started again. Well, I think the first thing to take into perspective is stalls are a natural part of growth. When you look at growth management, especially when you do have a very big, lofty goal that matters to you, that's going to take long term, that's going to take years to walk it out. The order of growth causes you to plateau, and you push and you accomplish something. And then often we think something's wrong because we don't have the motivation or energy at some certain point, but often it's a place to celebrate. It's a place to stop and pause and regroup and celebrate. And so we don't like that once we get going, to have these pauses, but those places are meant for something. There is a purpose there. So I can look at my own reaction to the pandemic. I mean, I freaked out. I lost clients. I thought I was going to die. And yet my whole business model has changed over the last year.
Wow.
So was it definitely a bad thing that happened, or was it a good thing? I didn't like the way it came, but I could either sit there as a victim and get upset with it, or I could regroup and go back to God and get fresh clarity. God, what would you have me do now? I don't have this right now. I don't have these people, on my calendar anymore. What do you want me to do with my time? So it's a matter of going back to clarity, taking new ownership, and then getting back in momentum with my new routines. And, for some people, if something like that doesn't happen, they might keep doing the same thing forever and not realize that there is a need for that. So it is gaining new clarity. It is seeking God again and in a fresh new way, and letting go of your flesh and knowing, God, you always do good things. You're always good. So what is good about this? And he will show you.
That's awesome. And you said something about, motivation, and that word just kind of flagged, like, hello, motivation. So, how would you encourage someone that when they're not motivated, like, how do you stay motivated to keep working on that goal, even when all of these things might, something might happen where you feel stalled or you're not seeing progress, like the motivation piece. What is your practice, or how do you coach people on motivation?
I don't coach anyone unless I can really get their vision. I just won't. And so that's the first thing we do is, what is it that you are wanting to go do with our work together? And so if they're not clear about that, that is the complete first goal to do, is to get really clear. I do believe God asks us, what do you want? What do you really want? And we can do all kinds of things that are good. But when he asks us that, and it accesses that part of us that really matters, he will bring clarity to that. And so when we get started and we're working, and I have clients that I've been working with for years, we keep that vision in front of us. And so when they start losing motivation and energy, or we go back down to, okay, what do we need to know now about the vision? Is there something new? If you run into something new that you're bumping up against. And so it really is returning to a place, like in the clarity model, which I can share about as well.
Yeah,
but it's returning to a place of structure. Is the structure right? Do I have everything I need to actually make this happen? And sometimes it's a change in the structure or the routine of how we're actually doing it will bring fresh motivation again. Changing one thing about your workout routine when you're trying to lose weight, you're like, well, it's hot. I don't want to walk. And so we can either stop walking and lose motivation, or we could say, wow, what other thing could I do right now when it's hot? How about where could I go swim? And it's a change of the routine, but the overarching goal hasn't changed to get fit or be strong or lose weight or whatever it is. It's a change in the routine, which can be uncomfortable. But sometimes we get thrown all the way to the bottom, and we have to, for whatever reason, we have really detached from the original vision. And it could be maybe we've come up against something we don't agree with anymore. Sometimes it's a values. Sometimes it's a values situation. And that can be really difficult because it's sometimes things we didn't see when we started out. But once you get moving and get into momentum, when you start stalling out and you start detaching from it, you can ask yourself, is there something here that isn't lining up with what I set out to do? And often that's a values thing. You've come up against something you don't agree with. It might be being asked to do something that's dishonest and you just can't do it.
Yeah.
And so you can have a great thing that you're going towards, but when it no longer fits, we have to go back to clarity, back to God, and ask God, what do you want me to do about this?
That's so good. Well, you mentioned the clarity model, and that is something that you have taught us. So can you talk about, I know we probably have a few minutes left.
Sure.
But can you talk about just what that is and how to use that?
Sure. I believe that the clarity model is the routine for the routine. And so I won't deep dive. I could actually give you a video that you could share at some point. But really, it is a model for the model. And the clarity model just is what everything we've been saying. It starts at the top with what is it that you're setting out to do and having as much clarity as you can around that. And the way you get clarity is ask all the questions. What do I need to know about this? Who is my competition? Why would I go do this? You're asking all the great questions. And then you have to move up into ownership. And once you've asked all the questions you know to ask, you move up and you take ownership of it.
Ew.
And yes, it's a hard step for many people because the way I describe ownership is responsibility and leadership. I agreed to take leadership over this thing and be responsible for the health of it.
Right.
And those steps all need to happen before we go putting structure. Routines is in the structure phase. So once we take ownership over it, then we go build the routines. Then we go build all the structure and all the time management and all the resources. And often, what can happen is we can be building routines over around something that doesn't really matter to us. And so we're just creating work that doesn't matter. So taking those steps, get clear about what it is you want to go do and that it really matters to you. Take ownership over it. Then go get yourself into structure and routines and accountability, and in order to see that, come to fruition.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And we could sit here and talk to you forever. Barbara is so full of wisdom. And ladies, I just want to say that if you are in a place where you're ready to have a coach, a one-on-one coach, Barbara is fantastic. She has done this for years. She can definitely help you be focus driven. And so I would just encourage you to visit her website, befocusdriven.com, and look at what she's done and how she can help you, and reach out to her. She's just an instrumental part of you being able to step into that goal or the dream that you have in your heart and bringing it to fruition. So Barbara, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
For being
Thank
with
you
us
for
today.
having me. It was fun.
Okay, we'll see you next time, ladies.
Thanks for listening to the Zvedá podcast. Keep your questions coming so we can rise together. Visit Zvedá.com to talk to us and join our community. That's Zveda.com. We'll see you next week.